Tale of the Antichrist, and then a 1905 novel by a Roman Catholic English priest called Robert Hugh Benson, and the novel is Lord of the World. In both of these fictional accounts, the Antichrist emerges as a charismatic figure, a kind of Superman. Soloviev, quote, "There was a remarkable person, many called him a Superman. He believed in God, but in the depths of his soul, he preferred himself." In Benson, the Antichrist is portrayed again as a charismatic figure. He becomes president of Europe. Then in some mysterious way, he's elected president of the world. But in both of those fictional accounts of a century ago, there's a plot hole. We're not given the mechanism by which this strange charismatic figure achieves dominance. And your argument is, again, if I understand it correctly, that now, today, a century after Soloviev and Robert Hugh Benson, we can understand a mechanism. We could imagine a mechanism by which such a figure might emerge.
Yeah, by the way, those are both fantastic books. I have a preference for the Soloviev one, but Benson and Soloviev are both terrific books. There are all these extraordinary ways that they still resonate 100 years later. So, Soloviev envisions the United States of Europe, so sort of a European Union, the sort of super state. In Benson, the Antichrist is a Jewish socialist senator from Vermont. And so I was a little bit nervous about Bernie Sanders, but so there are
too much on the nose.
There's sort of our elements of them where.
By the way, you're not quite the only person. I noticed in reading up on this, Benedict XVI several times mentioned approvingly the Robert Hugh Benson book, and Pope Francis over and over again has referred to it. So, two popes and Peter Thiel.
So there's sort of all sorts of parts of it where they have this feeling being near great literature, but the plot hole is sort of like how does a sort of world takeover actually happen? And it's kind of not a deus ex machina, but it's like a daemonium ex machina. It's like the Antichrist just gives these hypnotic speeches where nobody can remember a word, and then sort of just swindles people's souls out of them, and they submit to this totalitarian state or something like this. And I think if we were to speculate on how to solve that plot hole, we have an answer in the world after 1945. That people are in 1900, early 20th century, people were not yet scared of apocalyptic weapons. They could not imagine, anything of the scale that we'd have by the second half of the 20th century. And so the Antichrist takes over by talking about Armageddon.
Let's show this a brief video, which we will edit into the show, of course.
One world or none.
Exactly.
There is no secret. When a neutron strikes, the atom is split. Released neutrons split other atoms. The result is atomic energy. Shall the people of the world use this energy for the destruction or the betterment of mankind?
So that's a 1946 video. Everything about it, the images, the tension in the narrator's voice, the background music, is to be scary. The choice is this or one world. That dates from 1946, as I said, but here's a quotation from just a few years ago. It's from a paper titled The Vulnerable World Hypothesis by the very hip techno-philosopher Nick Bostrom. Quote, "What is needed to solve problems that involve challenges of international coordination, challenges such as nukes, pandemic dangers, techno threats, what is needed is effective global governance." Franklin Roosevelt designed the United Nations to serve in some way as a kind of world parliament after the end of the Second World War. The United Nations didn't work, but maybe FDR was just ahead of his time.
Yeah, well, it is the same. This is the plot hole in Soloviev and Benson, and it's an interesting question. What is the difference between we have this very secular language one world or none. And then there's the sort of overly religious question, Antichrist or Armageddon. And aren't they, and my thesis, they are somehow the same. And the if I had to say what the difference between those two ways of asking the questions are, is, Antichrist or Armageddon, it sounds like they're both bad options. And that way of asking the question, it pushes us to find a third way and not to just steer from one into the other. One world or none, those sound like they're exclusive, but they're also exhaustive possibilities. And since we don't want to have no world, we want the one world.
Harvard Law School, Adrian Vermeule wants big government. He has already argued for continent-wide government, and which would represent a step toward global governance. And his view is that if the government is based on some understanding of Christian ethics, and you make sure that it reflects subsidiarity, the principle that problems should be solved by the smallest unit possible, then big government coordinate, international coordinate. This is a good thing, not a bad thing. And you just don't buy that.
I do not buy it. I think, I don't know, I'm much more in the Lord Acton camp that, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and it would be a power with no check. There would be no outside left. It would be, in a sense, it would be the biggest crowd. It would be the biggest bubble. Probably a place where the Bible differs from Enlightenment rationality. Enlightenment rationality believes in the wisdom of crowds. Yes. The Bible believes in the madness of crowds, and if you have a world state, that's in some sense the largest crowd. It's the whole humanity closing in on itself. It's a global mob. So there sort of are these intuitions that are probably adjacent to ideas about the fallen nature of man and original sin that make me nervous about the one world state. Subsidiarity is good in theory and practice. The devil is in the details, and if too much of the power has to be at the top level. If you absolutize things like climate change or nuclear weapons control or things like this, that has to all be at the top echelon. It's not going to be decided by the city of Palo Alto or by some kind of a subsidiary layer. I have sort of more prosaic intuitions where, I sort of wonder what would be the marginal tax rates in a one world state where people couldn't move, and I suspect they would be quite high. It sort of would be like East Germany with no escape, and
you couldn't move to Texas or Florida and get a zero income tax rate.
And then I think California would push them higher, and the U.S. would push them higher, and the limit of that seems quite bad. And then, of course, if you go down the Bostrom argument, you need effective global government and extremely effective global policing. And so if you think about things like AI technology, it's just we have to stop anyone from programming the AI. And so you have to, in some sense, monitor every keystroke everywhere. So sort of something that's powerful enough to control the whole world.
So this goes back to your argument in the first part of this conversation, that for the first time in history, we can actually imagine human beings destroying the world. That's quite a plot. Now, also, we have the mechanisms that would make world government, a gigantic global surveillance state, is plausible.
That seems plausible too. And then I think, again, to come back to the Soloviev-Benson plot hole, on its own, they both seem not that desirable. Why would we have a crazy surveillance state? Why would we, why would we do this? But if you're scared enough of these things, that's the weapon. And this is sort of where my speculative thesis is that if the Antichrist were to come to power, it would be by talking about Armageddon all the time. And
Peter Thiel, the Antichrist would talk about Armageddon all the time. He'd scare people and then offer to save them.
Yes, it's the 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety, and so, which is nothing wrong with peace and safety, but you have to sort of imagine that it resonates very differently in a world where the stakes are so absolute, where the stakes are so extreme, where the alternative to peace and safety is, Armageddon and the destruction of all things. And then that's where peace and safety gets you way more than it would have in 1750.
Rene Girard, in I Saw Satan Fall Like Lightning, one of his books, the Antichrist boasts of bringing to human beings the peace and tolerance that Christianity promised but has failed to deliver.